Welcome to the Humanist community in Silicon Valley's Sunday Forum. My name is Matt Courtney. I am the recorder and a board member of the Humanist community in Silicon Valley. The Humanist community is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. Humanism is a reality-based philosophy of life that affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. We value freedom, health, happiness, fairness, compassion, and using science and reason to acquire and apply knowledge. If these words describe your thinking, we invite you to become a member of the Humanist community if you have not already joined. Membership forms are available on our website at humanists.org. That's humanists, plural, .org. If you are listening for the first time, we welcome and invite you to continue listening to our weekly forums and other events you can find listed on our website at humanists.org. Please feel free to contribute to aid us in continuing to present these forums. You can donate to our organization on the website humanists.org. So our speaker today, Mark Tuschman, he's been a freelance photographer for nearly 40 years, and he's come to talk to us about his new project, Immigrants Are Us. So, Mark.
Okay, so, well, thank you for having me this morning. And, yeah, I'm going to talk about this project that I've been working on for the last couple of years. And I guess I have a very, very personal connection to immigrants, as I am a grandson of immigrants who came here at the turn of the last century, and I realized that I probably would never even have existed if my grandparents hadn't come to this country. So when I saw all the hatred and anger being directed towards immigrants, I felt like I really had to do something. So, you know, I'm going to talk... I'm going to ad-lib my talk a bit because this is a talk I was giving before the pandemic started, and things, as we all know, have changed a lot. And even without the pandemic, things have been constantly changing with immigrants almost on a daily basis in the way they've been treated by this government. And anyway, you know, we all know, like, we're really are a nation of immigrants, and it's really our diversity and multiculturalism that has made America both unique and strong and really contributed to our economic, social, and scientific vitality. But we as a nation face gross economic inequalities, and it's been very, very politically expedient for Trump and his administration to use immigrants as scapegoats, to blame them for problems that we as society have been unable to address. And I don't have to tell you that we're living in a time of extreme polarization in America. And people have just created images in their minds about who immigrants are, and they listen to certain media. And they really don't know immigrants, but they just makes it very, very easy for them to demonize them. And my mind, their view is not based on fact, but mostly based on fear. So I've always asked, well, what can I do as a photographer to begin a process of healing and understanding and just sort of bridge people that have very, very diverse opinions and understandings? And how can we nurture empathy and compassion to embrace each other with respect and dignity, and just to bring our country to a place of greater optimism? So, as you know, I'm a photographer, and I really believe in the power of images and stories. And, one can argue about facts, and, can have discussion about politics, but you'll never ever change a person's opinion. But you can't argue about a person's experience in their life story. So I started this project 2 years ago, and since that time, I photographed like well over 120 immigrants from all walks of life, from the undocumented to those seeking asylum, DACA recipients, people that have some sort of green cards, and all the ways to those that have full citizenship. And I tried to focus on communities that were really being targeted by this administration, and basically they were being discriminated against. And that was, the Latino community, the Muslim community, and people from these countries that Trump has disparaged. And I've tried to really also focus on, to show how everybody that I photographed was really contributing to our country. And it's become even more apparent now because, a lot of the people that I was focusing on were like people in our food supply chain, the agricultural workers and the farmers and the chefs, the people that prepared the food. And also I focused on people in healthcare and also tried to show how immigrants were really contributing to our economy in the high-tech area as well. So the important thing was that unquestionably, each and every person I photographed really desired to contribute to our country. And I always had in mind like someone who was maybe a little bit skeptical about immigrants. And I really wanted to show that person how their food was dependent on immigrants, how their healthcare was dependent on immigrants, and how some of their economy was actually dependent on immigrants doing well. So anyway, I'm going to start. I'm going to show a little video that introduces the project, and then I'm going to talk about what my goals of the project are. And then I'm going to probably go through a slideshow with certain immigrants and tell you a little bit about them. So let me start the screen share here. Let's see if we could do this. Is this the video? Here it is. Okay, I'm going to start this. Can everybody see everything? The full screen?
For more than a century, American identity has been grounded in the notion that we are a nation of immigrants. This diversity has made America both unique and strong. Almost every immigrant American family has a story about flight from poverty, persecution, and hopelessness. But immigrants also face resentment. And now exclusionary immigration policy proposals are encouraging these perceptions. How do we begin to create bridges of understanding among people of diverse backgrounds? The power of portraits, when accompanied by stories of people's lives, can move us to appreciate people with vastly different experiences. One can argue about facts and politics, not about a person's story. So whose stories will you find here? Immigrants from all walks of life, from manual laborers to professionals in high tech, medicine, and law. Immigrants with all levels of documentation, from DACA recipients and refugees to those with full citizenship. Also, immigrant groups who have of late been targeted for discrimination, Hispanics, Muslims, and Africans. Some come to America fleeing mortal danger. Some come as survivors of sexual violence. Some are DACA recipients who live in constant fear of deportation despite their amazing accomplishments. Some are highly accomplished Muslim immigrants who deal daily with being unwanted. In the words of two immigrants, we're not coming here to take away things. We're coming here because we're desperate to be safe. And I encourage you to listen to these stories and understand that there's a lot more than just what any news outlet is trying to tell you. There's much more that defines us. Meet these immigrants, bear witness to their heart, determination, and dignity, and learn the stories of how they contribute in so many ways to make this country better for us all.
Anyway, so the whole goal of this project was basically not to really just to have a small social media exposure, but really was to have exhibits and mostly targeted into the purple states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, to have physical exhibits and really get people to experience I have images that were about 3 feet, I have narratives next to each photo. And of course, all that has been upended by the pandemic. I have two exhibits, one was traveling around Michigan and sitting in empty venues. And there's one in Southern California that was supposed to actually go to the governor's office, Governor Newsom's office. So all that, the pandemic has upended things, and it's not allowed me to really go out and photograph and continue the project. And, one thing I felt about distributing this thing just with social media is that we all live in silos. And I noticed, if you put something on Facebook, you may as well be talking to yourself in the mirror because you're only talking to people that are basically like-minded people. And so I thought traveling exhibits would have been the best way to go. And of course, the pandemic has, at least for now, has put an end to that. But so what I'd really like to do now is let's see, I'll start the screen share again and maybe go through some of the individual photos of the individual immigrants and tell you a little about them. And let me start the screen share again. So I actually organized this by, certainly certain by categories. Although if you go on the website and you look at the immigrants page, it opens up in a big giant matrix, and every time it opens up, it's just a random organization of about 110 or 120 immigrants right now. So it always is different every time you open it up. And I did want to do that purposely, just mix everything up. So this is Ephraim Morales, and he's right now he grows organic tomatoes, and he was a farm worker for about 20 years, and he doesn't speak English, and he has 3 children, 2 twin girls and a son. And he was really, really focused on their education. And every weekend he would take him to academic competitions. And currently, as of a year ago when I photographed him, both his daughters were in UCLA, and one was studying to be a doctor and the other one to be a lawyer. And his son was studying to be an engineer in San Luis Obispo, Cal State. Let's see. This is Javier Zamora, and he's, I met him last year, and he grows the best organic strawberries you will ever taste. And see if I can read a little something from him. He says, I farm a little over 100 acres. Anyway, to be able to go from seed or crown to a box of strawberries, you need a lot of brains. You have to educate yourself. The notion of highly skilled immigration, it is bullshit, because we have to be very highly skilled to produce the food that our society needs. I think that's very, very true. Just as an anecdote, I went there, he had last year where you could just go pick your own strawberries. And so I picked a box of strawberries, and then I bought some of the ones that his workers had picked. There was no comparison in the taste between what I picked and what his workers had picked. And this is Cruz, and again, he's also a, an undocumented farm worker. And he said, just a brief quote, is, "I bring food to the table. Every person counts, so I count too. Everybody's important, and everybody does their share to contribute." And it's just become, in retrospect, so much more important how these essential workers are deemed really non-essential by our society. They don't have any rights. They don't have health care. They're in danger of being deported all the time. Let's see. This is, let me get a second, let me get my notes here. This is Jose Higuerada. And he's a social worker in the Central Valley. And he was just telling me how people are feeling the fear from this administration. As a clinician, I see the level of trust that we used to have is not the same. People are feeling afraid to seek services. They're afraid to go out, to meet in a restaurant, and go shopping. But at the same time, these farmers support, the farmers that, his clients work for, they support the anti-immigration policies of the Trump administration. These immigrants are just moneymakers to them. These people don't care about their lives. There's another Javier, and he has a citizenship, but he was telling me I met him in, he works in the Central Valley, but I was planning to go out there, and I actually photographed him at a wholesaler where he delivers his produce. And, but he was telling me how worried he is about his grandparents. They have like a rather large farm in the Central Valley, but his parents are not citizens. They don't have health care, and they have illnesses. And, it's a really, really big burden on him. This is Teresa, and she was a victim of horrible physical violence back in Mexico, and she's been a farm worker for many years. And you could see, I don't know if you could see that she has a big bandage covering up a big hole in her nose. And it was because her husband, this is even hard for me to say, her husband just took a big bite out of her nose. And that's kind of the violence that so many of these women from Latin America are fleeing. And, she just, let's see if I can read something from her interview. Well, you know, one thing, I'm not going to read from her interview, but, you know, one thing she did say was that, you know, all these people, they have these ITN numbers and they pay their taxes and whatever, but they really get absolutely no benefits at all, even though they're paying their taxes. And they constantly have to really, really live in fear of being deported all the time. It's another photo of Teresa. And this is Carolina, and she's been working in agriculture for, I think, about 15 years. And let's see. I'm going to go over to some. This was a story about Samantha and her father, Eduardo, and he's a trucking supervisor. They live in the Central Valley. And the thing that was most touching to me, I mean, he supervises a lot of white people, and he gets a lot of hassle, and they tease him all the time about, you know, going back to Mexico and everything, and he can handle it. But what really affected me was the story he told about his daughter. And this was, 2-3 years ago, and, you know, during the in 2016, during the presidential campaign, and his daughter was in kindergarten, and they were sitting in groups of 4 or maybe it was first grade, I'm not sure. And one of the kids started piling books around her, and she asked, "What are you doing?" He says, I'm building a wall around you so you'll go back." And, you know, and that was, you know, it was very traumatic for her. And then a week later, one of the parents of one of these other kids started yelling at her and screaming at her that you're not friendly and whatever. So it really traumatized her. And her father told me that they were just, you know, that she's really changed her personality. She used to be more outgoing. And one night they were sitting at the dinner table, and she just burst into tears, and she was crying. And she just expressed how, like, she's afraid that, you know, that parents of her friends won't like her or whatever. And so, you know, it just shows how an incident can really affect a child really traumatize them for a really, really long time. And so much of that is happening right now. So I also, as I mentioned, try to photograph a lot of people in healthcare because I think, I don't know, I have to get the statistic right, but I think like 40% of people who work in healthcare are basically immigrants and, you know, deliver healthcare, be nurses or home healthcare workers. And there's a huge percentage of doctors that are immigrants. And this is Chandra, and she's a specialist, one of only about 30 or 40 in the world. She's an anesthesiologist who works on pediatric cardiac surgery. And, you know, she was telling me that, you know, she's really been discriminated against, and, you know, how much this country has changed since she's gotten here. And, you know, she was very, very disheartened. This is Ade. He's from Nigeria, and he's has a startup company where he can do basically people that have cardiac events and they don't have access to, like, doctors. He's invented an app to do effective telemedicine to keep track of them and to put them on a path so they can heal well. And he basically had to fight deportation because of the immigrant laws. And he was the CEO of this company. He had to demote himself, go back to school till the lawyers can work things out. It was kind of a really traumatic experience for him. This is Fareshta, and she's works at the Stanford Genome Center, and she's from Iran. And as you'll see, I really also tried to photograph on a lot of Iranians because there was so much prejudice against Iran in this country. And I wanted to really show how Iranians really contribute to our society so much. And she's a really brilliant researcher. And right now she's switched and she's working on COVID-19. This is Hector Bonilla, and he's a specialist doctor working on chronic fatigue syndrome. And this is Raza Taha, and she's originally from Syria. And, you know, she came here for opportunity, and she actually, I think she did her residency in the University of Nebraska, and I asked her how the hijab affected her, and she said, you know, it really didn't. She was very open with her patients, and then she went to get her citizenship. She volunteered, I think, 3 years to work in one of these underserved communities, and the one she picked, I guess, was in the Central Valley here in California. This is this very, very interesting story. This is Maria Sanchez, and she's an oncology nurse at Highlands Hospital in Oakland, and she was fighting deportation for like 15 years. And it was amazing. Like, even during the time that she was fighting deportation, she managed to get a degree and become an oncology nurse. But she ran out of options, and she was actually deported. And she was in the news quite a bit. And fortunately, she applied for the lottery, and she got the lottery, and she got Dianne Feinstein to write a letter for her. And one of the things that was really absolutely brutal, and she just broke down in tears, telling me about how she has 3 daughters here, and she made the decision when she was deported to leave them here in the United States. And she says it was just unbelievably painful for her. And, anyways, she did manage to come back to the United States, but she still has to deal with the immigration agents. But her husband, she's still separated from her husband, who's in Mexico, and she is working again in Highland Hospital as an oncology nurse. And it makes absolutely no sense to deport people like this. It's really criminal. This is Nargis, and she's from Afghanistan, and she does home health care. And, chances are, if you are at home and you need a nursing aide or someone to do home health care, the chances are very, very high, maybe more than 40% even, that someone that will knock on the door will be an immigrant. And this is Raza Taha. She's from Eritrea, and she's training to be a physician's assistant at Stanford. And what really struck me, or what she told me, was how much discrimination she saw in Stanford against immigrants. She saw lots of hate messages written in different places, and I was really, really surprised by that. And this is Andrea Rivas Dreyfus, who's she graduated from Stanford. She's originally from Peru. She works as an ER physician at Highland Hospital. And I don't know if you know about Highland Hospital, but that's basically the public hospital in Oakland. Excuse me, my dog wants to go out. I'll be back in a second.
taking a quick dog break.
Okay. Sorry about that. And, that's a hospital where it's a hospital of like last resort for people. And, and she works in the emergency room. And so she's getting all sorts of, people that don't have health care and undocumented people. And she was just telling me, even before the pandemic, how people were so fearful of getting health care because they were afraid that if they got health care, they would really get deported. And so, people let their illnesses get to a point where it became critical. This is Asa and his family. And he's from the Cameroon, and he got here on a lottery visa. And he was telling, there's this myth that, you get a lottery visa and anybody can come here, but that's absolutely not true. You really get vetted, and you have to have at least a high school degree, and you have to you have to show intention that you're really going to get an education, and you have some support for it. So it's even with a lottery and winning that, it just doesn't automatically mean that you could really come to this country. So it's just another one of the false lies that this administration has propagated. And as I mentioned, I wanted to focus on a lot of Iranians and how they contribute. And this is actually a friend of Herman's, is Nastaran. And she's a PhD researcher and doing cancer research in biophysics. And she's been here for 14 years and she's been in limbo. And when I photographed her it's been at least a year, she still wasn't able to get a green card, and she was just in limbo, and she was, she couldn't leave the country or anything. She couldn't go back to Iran. She couldn't even interview for another job in another country. But I think since that point, she did get a green card. And these are some more very successful Iranians. This is Lily Sarafan, and she's pretty amazing. She has a startup company that does home care services, and she has 3,000 employees. And she's actually on the board of directors of Stanford University. And forgive me, I'm forgetting her name. This is an Iranian judge. And, she really fulfilled the American dream by becoming a judge. And this is Nargis, and she also started a company called Bina, and working with all immigrants. And basically, she was one of the people that used a lot of high-tech computing power to help decipher a lot of the code of what was in the DNA sequencing. So this is starting a series now on a lot of women that have, and their children who are either gotten asylum or seeking asylum. And now you hear my dog. Just a second, I'm sorry. Please get her, son, bring her in. Thank you. Because I can't do this, I'm live right now. Anyway, I'm not going to go into details of these stories. They're basically all the same. They're all horrific. All these women have been subject to really physical and sexual violence. And this is Maria Maldonado, and she basically had to flee Mexico because she said, in a few years, her daughters would be subject to the same physical sexual violence if she didn't flee. Same is true for all these women. This is Olga. No, that's not Olga. That's Genoveva. This is Olga and her daughters, and she's from Honduras. And they actually came here. They were on the right before they closed the border, and not only was she raped and sexually abused, but so were her daughters that you see here in the photo. You know, the one on the left is 14, 15 years old. And again, I really try to show some of these essential workers, like the people who prepare the food in the restaurants. And all these people are undocumented, and I'm sure right now they don't have work, and you know, it's really, really terrible for them. I tried to show that how much immigrants actually contribute to our society, to our cuisine. I don't know if you've ever been to Zarene's on California Avenue. This is Zareen. It's really wonderful India Pakistani food. It's really wonderful. And this is Reina and her mother, and she's a DACA recipient, and they opened a restaurant in Oakland, and with genuine food from her culture back in Mexico. And, you know, of course, when I go and photograph it, I'm sure to take some food home. The food's really, really delicious. And I photographed, you know, a lot of high-tech people, and I'm only showing this a small section of them. This is Mayank Bawa, and he's an entrepreneur, and this is like one of many companies he started. He has like, you know, 40 or 50 workers, and he says it's right now with the new. This was like years ago. I don't even know what it's like now. It's probably much, much worse. He said like it was very hard to get workers with H-1B visas because it takes about a year to train people, and then they can get refused, and then they have to go back to their country. And, you know, it really makes no sense to train all these people and pay for all their education and then make them go back home. It's really very, very foolish, short-sighted policy. This is Sandeep, and he's from India, and he's one of the kind of a head senior Google engineer, and he's here with his twin boys, and you know, he's actually very, very worried about what their future is in this country, whether he'll stay here, continue to stay here in this country, or go back to India. And he says lots of Indian people who used to come here, you know, to try and build companies, and they don't want to. With the racism that they see here and the hostility, they're just not coming. They're just staying home and building their own companies and economy in India. This is Doroteo, and he's a janitor actually at Stanford. This was in Bing. And, you know, I have to say Stanford is, I don't know if you saw the news, but they've treated a lot of their contract workers terribly. They've fired many of them. They've laid them off, which I really think is really a shame and a disgrace. They have, you know, such a huge multi-billion-dollar endowment. And, you know, he's worked at Stanford for 20 years, and I think he still makes only, maybe $20 an hour. Again, an essential worker with no essential rights. Again, this is Carmen, and she's from Nicaragua, and she's a domestic worker, and you know, she's told me how, you know, she has a citizenship, but she came here many years ago, about 20 years ago, and you know, it's just a really brutal story what her what she experienced back home with her brothers were tortured and killed. Her mother, they took their home away. The Sandinistas took their home away. Her mother had to go live with this guy who raped her, and he was threatening to rape Carmen. And Carmen lived on the street, and then she got married and pregnant. And anyway, she just fled with her son to come to this country. And at that point, she was able to get asylum. Now, no chance. I also tried to break a lot of the stereotypes that were being propagated by Muslims about Muslims. And this is Faria Khan, and she is an MIT grad. She's an engineer. She's from Bangladesh, and she ran for a school board in Fremont. And even though Fremont is a minority community, she got tons of hate mail, and she didn't win the election. And it was sort of a really trying experience for her. This is Habibe, and she's from Turkey, and she runs a really, really big food bank. And down in, I think it was in Milpitas. And imagine, right now the needs are greater than ever. And I'm just going to end with a bunch of DACA recipients because, I'm in touch with some of them, and I know how nervous they are that, they can easily all get deported right now. And this is Darwin, and I believe he's from Nicaragua too, and he's head of the college track program. And, he was telling me how people just simply don't understand what it's like in those countries and why people are coming here. And, and people are not coming here to take anyone's job, but to just really, really, just to work hard and contribute to society. Sorry, I forgot her name. She's at Harvard now. She's also DACA. She's getting a master's in education. This is new, and he's actually totally undocumented, not even DACA. And he went to Berkeley, and then he went to Harvard Medical. No, I'm sorry, I didn't go to Berkeley. Yes, I'm sorry. He did go to Berkeley, got his degree there, and then he went to UCSF, and he graduated from medical school there. This is Sarahi, and she was told when she was in school that because she was undocumented, she couldn't go to college. There was no hope for her or anything, and she was very depressed. And anyway, she started this website. She did a lot of research, and she started an app called Dreamers Roadmap, and how people who are undocumented can get scholarships and really go to college. And she was honored at the White House during the Obama years. And this is Jesus Pinata Ramirez, and he went to Berkeley, and he's actually going to be going to Stanford Medical School. And he been doing a lot of work on farmers and how they're, people working in agriculture are exposed to all these pesticides and the damage that to their health. And he's very, very concerned because he's DACA and he could still get deported. And, he doesn't know that even if he wants to really stay in this country afterwards with all the discrimination that he's been facing. So I'm just going to end with a series of photos that I've been doing for a local organization, and we were supposed to have done a big fundraiser for them back in February, but it got canceled because of COVID. It's called Upward Scholars, and they basically help all these immigrants who, you know, a lot of them are undocumented. They help them get an education. After they get their ESL classes, and you know, they reach out to them, and they provide them with books and food vouchers and tutoring, and help them get their degrees in, help them find work, and help them get their degrees at a junior college like Cañada. And this is Luis, and he's actually going to be going to a 4-year college. And he's actually graduated from a 4-year college, and he's a civil engineer. And she wants to become a teacher. And this was photographed in a trailer park in Redwood City. She also wants to become a teacher. And, you know, there was a Zoom meeting. There was a Zoom meeting with Upward Scholars, and they were really describing how absolutely difficult it is for all these people that they've been supporting, because so many of them have these jobs, like in working in the restaurant business, or being nannies, or, you know, house cleaners or whatever. And now, you know, they've been unemployed and they don't have food, and they don't know how they're going to pay their rent. So I offered to try and, you know, maybe get a bunch of photographers together and maybe do some sort of art auction, try and raise money and donate money to them somehow. Yeah, so it looks like Warren is up first.
All right,
Warren, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I'm related to immigrants. My father's father immigrated from Germany before 1900, and my father, when he was 20 years old in 1917, he went with the American Expeditionary Force to France, and he survived that, and he married a woman who was an immigrant from Austria, and that was my mother. So my family is very immigrant-oriented, but also, I hate to tell it because anyway, a woman I know very well for about 20 years helps my wife every 2 weeks house cleaning. And you might think that's a slight job, but she's so damn busy that it's hard to get her any other times or whatever. So she's done well. And one of the things I feel like, although you've created a wonderful story and you feel very sorry for these people, on the other hand, I think the difficulty of getting in and across the border is so difficult that those who get across are determined and are going to add a hell of a lot to our country, and the occupations they get, they're going to do very well in. So I have a somewhat positive feeling about that.
Yeah, that's a really, really important point, and I'm glad you brought it up, because my feeling is that the people, you know, it takes a lot for a person to leave a country and pick up and make that journey. It's really a huge, huge decision. So the people that are actually coming here are like some of the best, most motivated people, you know, and it's exactly the opposite of what this administration's been saying. You know, it's really, but we live in a time where, you know, facts don't matter, and, you know, it's very, 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 very dangerous time we're living in.
You know, one of the other stories, back in 1980, I was working in a place, they hired a guy, his name was Farhad, and so I wanted to introduce myself to him, and I said, well, you speak very good English, but I can tell you come from somewhere else. Where do you come from? And he said, Persia. I said, Farhad, Persia doesn't exist now. Where do you come from? He said, I'm from Iran, but America is fighting Iran so hard, I hate to tell you that. Well, that's the government's. We're entirely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
Okay, looks like we have Meryl. Meryl, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this wonderful show. I think the photos were amazing, and the stories that go with them are equally amazing. I think telling stories is probably the best way to get across to people that these are real people, because it seems like it's so easy to dislike a whole group of people. But then when you meet an individual one, you can't hate them anymore. These are real people with real stories. So my question is, how do we get the people that aren't sitting at this table, because the people here obviously are very agreeable and so on. How do we get the people that are so negative to actually meet a real whatever it is? Because
yeah, I don't know if you were here at the beginning of my
no, I'm sorry, I missed the beginning.
Well, the whole point of this was really to have actual physical exhibits traveling to different parts of the country. So to get publicity, to get people, because I wonder if I can find, I may be able to show some pictures of some of the exhibits that I've had. But right now, the exhibits I've had are sitting in empty venues. The exhibits were really being targeted to like a lot of the purple states to get people to vote. And, the pandemic has put an end to that. And I really felt like the reason I wanted the exhibits was because of the very reason that you mentioned, that I really feel if you just put it on social media, we're just going to be talking to very like-minded people. And I really wanted people to see things in person. If they're not going to see a something on the, it's really a different experience seeing a 3-foot print in person, even if you're not going to meet the person. And I've had some openings here, but this is in the Bay Area, and I've actually had some of the immigrants come and speak. And I don't actually. All that's mute right now, Yeah. So I really, that's a good question. And I'd certainly like to open up the question to this group about how in these pandemic times we can really get this project more out there,
Well, thank you for all the work you've done.
Sure.
Okay, Dick Hewitson, you're up.
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you for a fantastic presentation. An anecdote before I ask my question is one of the most wonderful people I've ever met is a woman who cleaned my apartment for me in San Francisco, who was an undocumented Salvadoran. And she had lots of work because we all recommended her. But I felt so bad knowing her condition that she never knew whether she was going to be here or not. But my question that I wanted to ask is, when you were talking about the gentleman that you showed sweeping the floor at Stanford, you made a comment about Stanford's treatment of and I'm not quite sure how you put it, but I was quite shocked because you said it in such a way as if we all knew it, that this is the way Stanford behaves toward its employees. I wish you could speak to that a little more.
Well, I read there were some articles in the paper, and it shocked me too. It really did. And what I could do is there a way I could send out a reference? I have to go find it. Mm-hmm. And but they basically, I think I even posted on my Facebook page, so I'll have to get the reference. But they basically, so Stanford doesn't contract a lot of people directly. They go through agencies, right? So they sort of, in a way, wash their hands of it. So that they told the agencies that they weren't going to pay them. So the agencies have to go and fire all these workers. And you know, all these people they're living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, there's not like they have a savings account and can get by in a couple of months, you know. So I was really, really shocked just by reading that, and I'll try to you know, send if you tell me where I can send the reference to, I'll send you the reference to.
I can put my email on the chat room.
Okay.
Well, if you want, you can send the link to myself or Alex or something.
Okay, I'll send it. I have Alex's, or I think, yeah, I'll just send it to Alex.
Up on like the meetup, group or something like that.
But that really surprised me. And you know, it's interesting because I've been walking on the Stanford campus just to take walks, and I've noticed like things are getting really you never see Stanford as it is right now. Things are just getting overgrown, and I guess they've laid off the people who are like taking care of the buildings and the grounds there. And again, there's also people that live paycheck to paycheck, and you know, it seems, you know, with the huge endowment they have, they could afford to pay these people.
Okay, Warren had his hand up next, so I thought I unmuted you. Warren, I think you might have muted yourself, so you'll have to...
there we go.
Yeah, there
we
go.
Turn off that. I just wanted to mention one other thing. You're pointing out the very hardships of all these people. There also is an organization in San Francisco. A couple years ago, I learned about it, and it's called something like Fool's Journey. They have this funny name because they don't want anyone to take them seriously until they really go to court, because they will hire lawyers and go to court to defend immigrants who are being charged to be taken back to their other countries. And one of the things that I learned from the people, they give people a card like this, which is a business card, and it's written in Spanish on one side and English on the other. And essentially it tells you, my Fifth Amendment rights mean that I don't have to talk to you so if you're in an apartment, the immigrants don't have to open the door to let the police in. And also, they only have something, and it also tells them that only if you have a warrant from a judge and you slip it under the door and we look at it and it has my name on it, will I open the door for you or talk to you? And so they're very helpful for those who are having problems. And it's very nice to know that there is at least some people who are willing to work for these people.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Yeah, I've worked with some of the legal groups in the city. That's how I actually started the project, by contacting them, and I was able to interview some of their clients. Those were some of the first people that I did.
Okay.
It's become harder and harder to do that, and it's become more and more fear as even during the last couple of years.
Have Jerry Cummings, I can't unmute you. You're going to have to unmute yourself, Jerry. There you
go. I just wanted to pass out a little information in case anybody might be interested. If you're interested in helping the farm workers in the Monterey Bay area, there's a group called the Santa Cruz Community Ventures, and a part of that is UndocuFund, UNDOCUFUND, and it's a very well-run organization. And so if you want to help the farm workers, it's a good place to donate. I got it through my daughter, who works for the Santa Cruz Health Department, works with the Hispanic community, and her husband is an immigration attorney. So they're both involved.
Okay, and I'll also include in the email, there's another organization that I know who really works on farm worker rights.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I have Emma next. Emma, you're unmuted.
Yes, I have a question. Is it difficult for you to interview these people, get their story, and ask for permission to tell their stories before the public? So that's my question. I also have a comment. I'm an immigrant myself, and I have to tell you, just because I am an immigrant, it doesn't mean I totally understand the stories of other immigrants who come from other cultures and other countries. So, for example, in Silicon Valley, I don't really encounter Hispanic people very much in my life.
You don't what?
I don't encounter Hispanic people very often in my daily life. And I was fortunate that I was in a peer counseling group, and I heard, they are Hispanic in the peer counseling group, and I heard their pains of growing up, and I got to understand it a lot better. And because of that, I now have affinity. I think this emotional affinity is very important if you want to overcome, the barriers of people who look very different from you. And I now see them totally differently from when I have little contact with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, see, to answer your first question, nobody would agree. I told everybody what I was doing. And, I didn't ask for model releases because I'm not doing this for profit, It's just, people wanted to tell their stories. People didn't want to tell their stories. That was the end of it, It didn't go any further. So, people were very supportive of the project in general. And I really invite you to visit the website, the immigrantsareus.org, because there you'll get much more detailed stories from each immigrant. And I just basically, I didn't really, with rare occasion, I really didn't speak in their words, but there you'll get it in their first person, their words, their story. And I think that's, more impactful than me talking about it. And I agree with you, it's really, personal stories and really having personal encounters is really the only thing that can really break down barriers. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have Alex is next with his hand up, so go ahead, Alex.
Okay. That's my hand. Yeah, I was wondering if how successful you feel your displays were. Did you get any feedback from it? And do you feel as though you've changed people's minds? It's hard to get feedback on something.
Yeah, it's hard. The feedback's been very, very positive, very positive. But do I know if I change people's minds? I don't. I really, I don't know. I was supposed to actually work with this group called Define American and go to several different campuses and do presentations and probably encounter a much broader section of people. And, that was, of course, canceled with the pandemic. And so basically, honestly, the project was really cut short by the pandemic. And
I also wanted to comment that I'm kind of appalled by a lot of what I hear about what the administration is doing, what's going on about people's attitudes. But I keep remembering this is the same generation that elected Barack Obama, so there is hope for us.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, things will either get a lot better or a lot worse. It's I don't know which way it's going to go, but I'm pretty personally appalled by what I think these people are, just crazy fanatics, just not paying any attention to the epidemiologists or the scientists, and just, even being hostile to people that are wearing masks, and, just disregarding science. And it's very, that frightens me more than Trump. Just the fact that even in Michigan they have an armed militia take over the state house. I mean, that reminds me of Germany. It's pretty scary.
Yeah. We have a few people who seem to be having trouble with using the raise hand feature. I'm going to try and get to them. They've been posting in the chat. But I just want to remind everybody, to get to that button, you need to bring up the participants window. And to get that, you have to click on the participants button at the bottom of the Zoom meeting window. And then once the participants window is up, the raise hand button should be at the bottom or under the more button. I got to jump to Helen. Helen, you're good.
Well, that's what I did, and nothing was happening.
Yeah, apparently you were having a little trouble with that. So
yeah, well, I raised the participants thing, and I clicked the hand raise hand, but nothing happened.
Yeah.
Or I didn't get recognized. You mentioned, Mark, purple states, and I'm in one. As far as I know, Arizona is a purple state, trying to push it toward blue. Will there be an exhibit there when things get opened up more? And
yeah, well,
juicy,
the thing is, it's but it probably won't be before the election.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, was to do it right before the election.
Yeah.
And I mean, personally, I don't know what other people are doing. I'm still going to be sheltering in place for quite a while. I'm almost 76. I see most of you are, are seniors as well. And I don't know what you're going to be doing, but, from what I read, things aren't going to change much. It's probably going to become, from what the scientists are saying, there's probably going to be a big spike in the COVID-19 cases as more people resume more of a normal life. So I certainly don't see myself traveling for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Lenore, you can go ahead.
Hi. I really want to thank Herman for inviting me to this. And I've been a long time fan and know our speaker up there. His work is amazing. And I just want to say it is kind of awesome that over all these years you keep doing it.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's sort of...
Mark, you don't seem to get as discouraged as you might get.
Well, I think doing it keeps me more encouraged, but one thing that's been really hard for me during the last, 2 months is I haven't been able to go out and photograph and document more people. And, that's been hard.
Yeah, but the thing is, some of us do, some of us don't, but you, in the end, never get beaten down. So I really want to acknowledge that, because how many years do we know each other? 25, 30 years?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, and that is a very impressive part of your personality, and thank you for sticking with it.
Thank you.
That's an inspiration to some of the rest of us.
Thank you.
Herman.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to say that the facial expressions of those pictures you showed were spectacular. They conveyed so much of the message that you're trying to get across. And regarding putting this out there, are you considering another book such as you did with Women on the Edge?
Well, probably not. You know, a book is like honestly, it's a money-losing proposition. But even more importantly, a book is just going to go to people that agree with you. You know, and the point was really to try and get it to the people that, you know, to open up people and to give people a different perspective on immigrants and try to bring about, a little, as I said in my opening remarks, a little bit more compassion and humanity into this society. And I don't think, I mean, I don't, you know, I'm retired now. I don't have the financial capability to do another book at this point.
Well, I think some of us would like to help you, so consider a GoFundMe project again.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Alex and Senna, it looks like you muted yourself, so you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay, you're on.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, I had two things. I want to encourage him to not give up on people who already believe a lot of what he believes. We need all the support we can get for the truth when we hear so much that is not true. And the other
point, that's an important point. I probably overlooked that. Yeah.
Good. The other point I wanted to make was that people keep saying, how could these people believe such terrible things about people? When you have a group that believes Trump, everything Trump says is true, and they can think that thousands of people dying are a plot to take him down, you've got a problem. And then it's not necessarily, it's at the top. And we can just hope that once he's gone, we'll be able to overcome it, or at least live with it.
Yeah, well, right now, there's no reasoning with a lot of these people, because what's happened in my mind is we have a cult, not a...
Yes, exactly. The word I was thinking of using. That's
it's a cult.
Exactly what we got.
It's the definition of a cult, because they value a belief system more than their own lives.
Yes. Thank you.
Warren. Warren,
thank you. I noticed all your pictures are in black and white, and I enjoyed them very well. I thought they're very well done. But I remember when I first started photographing, I only had black and white film, but now I do color film. And I'm just curious, was there some artistic reason why you chose to do all your pictures in black and white?
Yes, good question. I thought black and white had more gravitas, was more classic, you know. To do pictures in color, I thought the color would be distracting. It wouldn't. The color would be all over the place, you know. And it's interesting. But I had the occasion, about a year and a half ago, to go over a lot of my original work, because I've been doing this for 40 years, and I started out. I mean, I wasn't trained as a photographer. I was getting a PhD at Berkeley, and I worked at Stanford and at the hospital developing a computer system. And so when I switched to photography, I always intended to be a social documentary photographer and have art exhibits and do books. And I was doing all my work in black and white, so I had the chance to review a lot of that stuff. And I really realized it stood the test of time. There was a certain classicness about it, and I don't know, it was, got more down to the emotion of the issues. And so it was clear to me that I was going to do this in black and white.
Very good. Yeah. Neat.
Okay, Lenore, back up.
I was just thinking about one possibility of kind of where you can do things, Mark. And what I've noticed every time is all the museums now, unfortunately, everything takes time to arrange. But a lot of the museums are now showing their exhibits online.
Yeah.
And they reach a huge number of people that the museum itself wouldn't meet. But
that's a great idea. I could reach out to some museums. It's easy for the. Yeah, I like that idea. That's probably. Yay! That's a good idea. Actually, maybe you could help me.
I'm still waiting for the phone call.
Okay.
I would be delighted to help you do this. I mean,
because it's, for them to put up an online exhibit, it's not like a real exhibit. It could be easy. And
you've got a story to tell if you get to the right museum. I mean, in New York City, I don't know, they're immigrant museums. Oakland Museum might do it. Your photography would fit a photography museum, but they go far and wide beyond people that can walk in the door.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk.
Okay.
Emma.
Yes, I saw from chat and people are interested in talking to these immigrants in person. I have a suggestion. When we do invite these immigrants in, we can have what I call a more controlled conversation, which means that somebody suggests the topic for both sides and have people talk to each other, answering those questions or doing certain exercise. The reason is that I think a lot of immigrants also struggle with cross-cultural issues, and they may not be very familiar with American ways of having, chit-chat and conversation. And also this kind, if you get people to talk about important things first, it's much easier for both sides to understand each other better. So that's, and after that for a while, maybe you can have a free conversation. But I do think one-to-one conversation is important because the established feeling of affinity.
I was thinking your idea, like if I propose things to museums, I could also propose do at some point a Zoom thing with me and several of the immigrants that I photographed. Right? That would be a good,
Yeah, and also I think one-to-one conversation is important as well, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree.
Okay. I see Susan. Yeah, just a second. Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, this is sort of a long shot. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. I just, I don't know who of you have seen the movie The Factory by Michelle Obama.
Yes.
Fantastic movie. And, if you can get her attention, it would be incredible. Mark, I don't know if you have seen The Factory.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
But, she promotes things that are of this order. And
yeah, I think it's very, very, unless you know someone who knows her, it's.
Yeah, I know. It's a long, long shot, but
yeah.
She's an incredible person.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and let everybody unmute yourself so we can go into kind of the general discussion. Be aware that we have a lot of people in this Zoom meeting, so be careful. Try not to talk over each other if everybody's talking at the same time, or even if two people are talking at the same time. Nobody can hear anybody. So, go ahead. Like we have a lot of people unmuted.
I'd like to know what the last line on your T-shirt is. What is it? Stand back, I'm going to try what?
Science.
Oh, thank you.
Anybody else have questions or comments? A lot of people unmuted themselves.
I mentioned.
I think there is, when you deal with people that you're not familiar with, there is two problems. The first problem is that you approach them and you look at them with a fear because they are unfamiliar. And unfamiliarity sort of trigger fear in you, and that you don't want to have anything to do with them. So one way to overcome it is to tell these people that these people are just normal people. They are nice and this. Okay. And then the next level is when you do have contact with them and you start to feel there's certain thing that's not right because they come from a different cultural background, or you have seen certain things that, within their culture, it just, that just seems to be pretty bad. And I think, I know that my idea is probably a very difficult idea. I really think for people to know each other, to get along each other, and for the society to improve, every subgroup should be able to talk about their own problems. Okay, and this way they become aware of their own problems, and they can talk about their own strengths as well. And for all the subgroup people to be familiar with all the subgroups' strengths and weaknesses, and then people can grow. Otherwise, if people say, "Oh, this is sounds so bad," and I don't want people to know about my group's problem because they're going to look down upon us, and that is actually has its problems. So I'm done.
Anybody else?
I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah. Looks like some people are leaving as well, but still have a pretty big group.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. It was really, really very good, very enlightening. I wish there were another venue that could, be promoted, that you could promote this whole thing, but I'm not sure, museums, who go to the museums, but mostly blue people.
Right.
It just feels like, but to see you, just being open to the other people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you. Everyone stay well and stay safe.
Stay sane.
Okay.
Marion, I just went ahead and unmuted you, so you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just a minor point, but I think that the movie that Susan referred to is actually called American Factory.
Yeah.
Factory. And I think it's on Netflix.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, I know. I'm telling everybody else, so if they want to try to see it still.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. It was great. As long as I'm talking, I'll add that. I love looking at your photos.
I had a real quick comment. I saw a little picture along with Immigrants Are Us, your title, and a picture of Alexander Hamilton, and I was thinking you could throw in the phrase, immigrants, they get the job done.
Yeah, I like
because
that.
They are doing that in spite of everything.
That's right. Thank you.